Welcome to WIDA ACCESS. What does the test even look like? I'm Shelby Eby, the Elementary English Learners Content Area Specialist. If you're watching this video live, I'm in the comments to answer any questions you may have as we go through the PD. Let's jump in. We as Elkhart Community Schools have a district goal of growing our English learners, especially those that are level 3.5 to 4.9. Because of this district focus this year, we've been getting lots of questions about WIDA ACCESS from administrators, teachers, and all sorts of people across the district. The goal of this PD is to answer those questions. We hope that this PD will answer as many of those questions as possible and help you think about how to get your specific students ready for the WIDA ACCESS test. I'm going to switch over to some slides so that you can see examples of test content and student errors, misconceptions, and dive into the test format. Let's swap to some slides.
Here we are. Let's start with some basic info. WIDA ACCESS is an adaptive assessment for English learners. Many teachers refer to it as just WIDA, but it is specifically called the WIDA ACCESS test. Our newcomer English learners are most often level 1 students with very limited English proficiency. The highest level of fluency is level 6. Students are considered fluent and no longer receive English learner services as soon as they score a level 5 on the ACCESS test. District-wide, we have many EL students that stay at or around a level 4 and just can't quite score the level 5 needed to exit the program. These students sometimes appear very proficient in social English, but they struggle with academic language and often don't speak much of their home language at all. So our goal is that students can score a level 5 overall. To do this, they must score high enough to get a composite score on all 4 test domains. There are 4 different tests, one for each domain. Students begin by taking the adaptive listening and reading sections. Then, based on their listening and reading performance, students are placed in tiers for the speaking and writing tests. Let's first take a look at what the listening and reading tests look like. The reading test is the most familiar test format for students. It looks a lot like NWEA, iLearn, or any other ELA standardized test. For elementary students, there is no pause for rapid guessing. Test administrators have to be very careful to be watching for student effort because students can't go back once they've completed a question. Students begin taking this test online in 1st grade, and unlike any other reading standardized tests, Access reading does not read students the directions in 1st grade. They must read everything on their own. There are almost no accommodations available to any students, regardless of student disabilities. The listening test reads everything to students and requires them to show understanding of the question. Students can only hear the question one time. Once they click the next button after finishing a question, the audio plays automatically for the next question. Sometimes students will click the next button before they're ready to listen to the next question, and then they will miss part of the question and not be able to answer it. When students take the practice test, they should be reminded that they shouldn't click next until they're ready to listen. Note the test times on this slide. Each of these tests are long, especially for primary students. They have to finish the test in 1 day, and tests are untimed, so grades 4 to 12 students often take longer than the times noted on the slide. Let's go to an example of a question on the listening test. Let's listen to it so we can see and hear the test format.
I don't know which math activity to choose.
Well, on the table you have a board game, flashcards, and bingo cards. Bingo and the board game are activities you do with a partner or in a group. If you want an activity you do on your own, use the flashcards.
I'd like to work by myself.
Which activity does the boy choose?
Tasks on the listening test range from P1 tasks, which are simple questions for the lowest level English learners, to P5 tasks that require extended listening and comprehension to complete. As students go through the test adapts to their level. Now, let's take a look at a sample reading question. The reading test has a passage on the left and answers on the right, just like other standardized tests like iLearn and NWEA. Take a moment to look over the question. As you can see, this question is asking about academic vocabulary like the word value, which is content area vocabulary for math. This is a pretty simple passage and question. Passages get longer with more vocabulary depending on students' grade levels and performance. Now let's focus in on the other two access tests, speaking and writing. These are usually the most difficult for students and district-wide are our lowest scores. The speaking test is generally the shortest test, but also the most stressful for students. Students must speak about a topic into a microphone. They only get one chance to record and often stop the recording if they make a mistake. If students click stop, they lose their one chance to record. This test takes a long time for teachers to administer because testing groups must be very small to accommodate for students recording responses in the same room. Students often don't want other students to be able to overhear their recordings and like to be as far away from the other students as possible. The writing test is often the longest test for students. They can take as much time as they need on their responses. Kindergarten to third grade students do their writing on paper, and beginning in fourth grade students type their responses. Students that type their responses often need help knowing how to capitalize letters and practice with keyboards, especially in fourth and fifth grade. Students are expected to begin writing multiple paragraphs in second grade, which is often more than they are expected to write in classrooms at that age. Let's take a look at what the speaking and writing tests look like. The speaking test models a conversation between a narrator and a girl named Nina. This is Nina. Nina's responses are an example of how much students should say. Students should say more than Nina to be able to meet the expectation of the speaking task. Let's listen to the prompt to hear how the narrator interacts with Nina.
This is the photographer. She takes many pictures with her camera at the art show. Some of the pictures she takes will appear in the newspaper. This is the reporter. He talks to people at the art show. He interviews people or asks them questions and takes notes about what they say. Later, he will use his notes to write the newspaper article. Nina, tell me about what the photographer is doing at the art show.
The photographer takes lots of pictures with her camera at the art show. Some of the pictures she takes will be in the newspaper.
Now it's your turn. Tell me about what the reporter is doing at the art show.
So then students would collect their thoughts, practice saying them out loud, and record their response. Once again, students need lots of practice speaking in complete sentences, elaborating on their thoughts, and they need to be reminded that they cannot click stop until they are completely done with their response, even if they make a mistake in the middle or need to restart. They have a limited time to record, so they should not press record until they have collected their thoughts. Students often prefer and are much more successful if they organize their thoughts, practice speaking out loud before clicking record, and then record their actual response. Speaking practice about concepts and images can be easily integrated into any content area. Making sure to include all language domains is an essential part of SciUp lesson planning, and speaking practice can be a part of SciUp lessons. The last domain is the writing domain. Everything in the writing prompt is read to students, and students must respond with their best writing. Let's take a look.
Look at the diagram showing the assembled equipment. Write a paragraph of at least 8 sentences explaining how Camilla will use the equipment to find out which of the liquids has the highest boiling point.
Often, even our level 3.5 to 4.9 students are not scoring well on writing because they lack the extended, connected sentences required to get a level 5 on the rubric that we'll talk about in a little bit. Now, you've seen an example question from each domain of the test. All of the tests are long tests, and we schedule each of the 4 tests on different days if it's possible. If that's not possible, we generally don't do more than 2 domains on a single day, usually listening and reading, and then speaking and writing. Listening and reading must be scheduled first because the tests determine the tier placement of the student for the speaking and writing tests, a way to ensure that less proficient students are not overwhelmed immediately in the speaking and writing tests. The WIDA website has lots of practice items and test demos for you to see more examples of questions if you'd like. Let's take a look. Immediately, you can see that the format is exactly the formats we'll see when actually taking the test. It looks exactly like the DRC app that students use to take the test. Test demos are available for each grade level cluster in each domain. When you click on a domain, let's say I want to practice 9th grade writing, tiers will appear. Tier A demo tests are generally for level 1 to 2 English learners, and Tier BC for levels 3 and up. That isn't true for all cases, but it's a general suggestion. Notice also that test demos are available for tests with accommodations as well. RA, MC accommodations. Students that have the RA, repeat audio, or MC, manual control of audio accommodations, can see what their test will look like and practice using these accommodations on the test demos. Paper writing practice for grades 1 to 3 is also available on the WIDA website and also linked in this video's description. The link to test demos is also in this video's description. Let's go ahead and go back to the slides. Now that you have an idea of what each section looks like, let's look at our district's strengths and weaknesses. Our students' lowest scores are often speaking and writing, like I mentioned before. In writing, students miss part of the prompt, don't add enough detail, or don't use enough academic vocabulary. Sometimes they just miss talking about a part of the picture or diagram in the prompt. On the speaking test, students are terrified of speaking into the microphone. They don't say things in complete sentences, or they don't say enough. In general, the tests are long, students get tired, and rapid guessing can be an issue if students are test fatigued. So, what can we do? Take a look at this overview of the writing rubric. The full writing rubric is linked in the video description, and we'll look at it in a little bit. It's a little more complex, but the full rubric describes exactly what students need to do to attain each level of writing. On the full rubric, each level has 3 sections: linguistic complexity, language form, and vocabulary usage. Students must score at that level in each of the sections to get that score on the writing test. So it's lots of detail to tell you what writing should look like. Since students need to write connected text with transitions and lots of academic vocabulary, many of our students get stuck at a level 2 or 3 for writing. Because their sentences don't vary in form and sometimes they lack the content vocabulary needed, that's where we're missing stuff for writing. Level 3 writing still includes content area vocabulary, a range of sentence patterns, and some text organization. It takes a lot of writing experience to get to a level 4. The best thing that we can do is give students as many opportunities to be familiar with this and practice writing as much as possible. Practicing writing needs to happen in Tier 1 classroom practice in SIOP lessons. For speaking, students need practice talking in complete sentences and need to say more than Nina. Again, they need to practice in each classroom in Tier 1 instruction. If we continue to think intentionally about including each of the 4 language domains, listening, reading, speaking, and writing, in our language objectives, students should be getting daily practice in the classroom to become more confident and successful. Finally, we have some specific strengths district-wide. Listening and reading scores are often students' highest domains. For listening, scores are improved by the fact that students can't skip the question until they've listened to the entire audio. For reading, the test format is familiar, and we can do our best to limit student speaking anxiety by providing them a small group format for speaking tests. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope that you have some new insight on the format and challenges of WIDA Access for our English learners. Through intentional SIOP lesson planning and providing students lots of support when practicing speaking and writing, we can better prepare our students to be as successful as possible. Feel free to reach out and send any follow-up questions to me or Rhiannon Harrison. Our emails are on this slide. And make sure to check out the video description for these slides and lots more resources for preparing for WIDA Access. Have a wonderful day.